Hey folks, back here with the Ariens ST824, about to finish it up, and found out the hard way that I had a bit of a micro SD card malfunction in my camera, and I lost a good portion of the project. So I'm going to attempt to give you a walking tour and summary of what's been done since the last recorded portion. And we will finish the last little bit off with the tire inflation and addressing the customer complaint. So I believe we left off replacing or removing the old scraper bar and guide feet or skid shoes in order to address the customer's complaint about the snowblower riding up and over the snow and not necessarily scraping the ground evenly or enough to clean the concrete. So here is the old scraper bar. It was a lot easier to see when I laid the old one on top of the new one. But if you look very carefully, right here near the center is where it's worn thinnest, and it's a little bit thicker at the end, and it's a decent amount thicker on the other end. And so I haven't been able to prove it yet, but I think that the way that the scraper blade wore is part of what was contributing to the riding up over the snow. Then we went ahead and replaced the skid shoes because this one was pretty much done, and this one not far behind. So now, brand new double-sided skid shoes that will last quite some time. And we got a brand new scraper bar installed with new hardware. And it cleans the floor pretty decently. You can even see it's actually scraped up some of the paint from the floor as I tested it to see how well it would scrape up the rust and debris that came loose from taking the old one off. While here, the auger has a couple of grease fittings on each side. Those both got greased. The bearing on each end of the auger shaft got lubricated. And then the auger gearbox here has oil in it. And so I pulled the plug and verified that the oil level is still satisfactory, which it is. Working my way around the rest of the machine, the chute got lubricated. The shaft and the gear to rotate the chute, which has several different U-joints in it. There's one there, and then one there. All got lubricated as well as checking all the linkages and cables for the clutches, and made sure that when we pull on the clutch, they go tight, and we get some spring stretch to make sure that everything's properly engaged. We made sure that the belts go tight and the pulleys and everything are all good there. And then we rechecked the tire pressure and found that this one, which was low and had a small leak along the bead, is now holding air much better than before, and also much better than the other side. So if we go back over to this side now has dropped a few PSI just overnight. So in a moment here, we're going to put the snowblower back up. We're going to pull this wheel, and I filled the dunk tank, and we're going to dunk tank it to pinpoint the leak on this tire and see if we can seal this tire up so that both tires hold air really good for the customer. As I mentioned earlier, I think that part of the concern was the tires were low on pressure, and it was hard to push down on it was easy to push down on the handles to get the snowblower to tip up. I could still do it without too much effort. However, with the tires at about 17.5 psi, it does take considerably more effort to push down on the handles to get the front to tip up than it did initially when we first started. So we'll see if we can't find a source of leaking on this tire, seal that up, and hopefully the owner won't have to fill the tires all that frequently throughout the winter to keep the scraper bar in contact with the ground. Also noted was that after running it and making some mixture screw adjustments to help smooth out the engine because it was surging a little bit, so I had to adjust the mixture screws a little bit to smooth it out. After shutting it down and letting it sit for a while, it developed a bit of a leak. It was dripping right out the front of the choke end of the carburetor. And so the carburetor ended up getting a carb kit. And the suspect of the leak here was this seat. Normally, I'm used to Tecumseh inlet needle seats being white in color. And initially I thought maybe it had just gotten dark from sitting in bad gas. But afterwards, it was a very slow drip, but too much to be considered okay. So I went ahead and put a carb kit in it. This is what they look like when they're new. Let's see if we find it. And here's what you can see the little white seat there. That's what I'm used to Tecumseh carburetor seats looking like. And the color, they get a little bit yellowed over time, but they don't usually turn quite that color. So all the parts in the carb got replaced. The O-ring for the fuel bowl, the sealing washer in the idle mixture screw got replaced, new inlet needle, new seat, new float hinge, and a new main jet. The only thing I didn't put in were the 2 Welch plugs that came with the kit, because the Welch plugs on the carburetor appeared to be in good shape, didn't appear to be leaking, and I didn't have a need to clean behind them. Okay. And then, this is what all those same components look like when they're new. So we put a carb kit in and made some adjustments. It starts and runs pretty nice now, and it doesn't leak. We'll get the snowblower put up and the wheel off so that we can address the leak, and we will retest the scraper blade to make sure that it's clearing evenly. My dirt pile from removing the old scraper blade is gone, but I think I'm going to go ahead and try using some floor dry in its place to kind of simulate some snow on the concrete. Got 17.4 in it now. I'll fill that up so it's closer to the 20 mark. We'll adjust the tire pressures later, but this way we've got plenty of pressure to see where it's going to leak. So I'm just going to put it in the water. Keep an eye out for bubbles. Kind of got to let the water settle out a little bit after each time you move it. If it's a really slow leak, the bubbles may be very intermittent. So this oftentimes can be something that takes a fair amount of patience. Check the backside. I should note that I'm keeping an eye on the edge over here too, where the treaded area is, to see if there's anything in the tread area, along with the edge of the rim and the sidewall tire, where sometimes the tires get weather checked. They can start leaking right through the tire. If I don't find a leak, I'm inclined to put some bead sealant around the rim anyways, just to make sure that I didn't miss a really, really slow leak with really small bubbles. to see if that helps. Alright, same as before. I'm going to dump the air. Could take the core out, but it's not usually a whole lot in these, so this usually goes pretty quick. Being very gentle, don't have to push very hard. You can kind of notice how much the tire shrinks as you deflate it, and what a difference in diameter that makes. We'll do both sides just to make sure it's good. A little bit extra by that rusty part of the rim there. Fill it up, let it dry. It's like watching it grow. Okay, right at 20 psi. So we'll let that sit and dry for a little bit, and we'll put it back on. Alright, let's get that tire on. Remember to always make sure they start by a couple of threads by hand first. Just going to snug them up, run them in quick. Come back with a regular ratchet, tighten them down. And I'll do a final tightening once it's on the floor. So I've checked the tire pressures, and they're both 20 psi plus or minus 0.1 psi. Kind of large granules. Well, let's see if this gives us an indication on how even the scraper blade is now. Not bad. A little bit left on each of the edges, but the middle's pretty well clear. I'm going to assume that as the new blade wears in, that will improve. I can go ahead and try to maybe readjust everything. But it's pretty much sitting on the scraper blade right in the center. Wonder if the housing is bowed a little bit, and therefore the scraper blade's bowing a little bit too, which would explain the wear in the middle of the original scraper blade. But when I go to try to push down on it, if the tire is fully inflated, it does take a lot more force than it used to lift the front of the machine up off the ground, so hopefully that addresses the issue. I guess time will tell. We got to wait till we get some actual snow and give it a try. Well, that ought to be it for this one. Last thing to do is going to be to park it outside and let it cold soak for a little while, and then give it a test to make sure that it starts just as well outside in the cold as it did in here, and make sure that it runs well out in the cold as well, and the snap throttle is also good outside when it's actual cold. So now that it's been cold soaking for a while, it's time to go ahead and see how well it starts and runs. Make any last minute adjustments outside. Fuel's on, choke's on, idle is set, primer bulb is primed, switch is on. So close.
Well, I guess that'll do it, folks. Sorry that I lost some of the footage, didn't need to. Hopefully we were able to see the issues and what hopefully addresses them. Time will tell. I'll try to come back and leave an update in the future if I have one for you. Otherwise, until next time. And thanks for watching.